Hello, this is the view from Mount Ainslie looking down over Parliament House in Canberra, A.C.T. Uh, Sorry for the shaky camera work, we had to zoom in, it's quite far away, but here we can see on the shores of Lake Burley-Griffin there's a Milky Way map on the ground there next to the flagpole. In the next scene we're going to be standing right next to it, so we have Lake Burley-Griffin, named after Walter Burley-Griffin, who was who designed the town plan and much of the features of Canberra. Canberra is the capital city of Australia. It's very much as the equivalent of Washington DC, Canberra A.C.T, Australian Capital Territory, Washington DC, the District of Columbia. It's a federal district, very similar to the federal district of Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and very similar to Astana, places I've covered in previous videos. The focus of this video will be on Paris, but just to show the connections between the grand cities of the world and how these in plain sight secrets are held and how they relate to esoteric mysteries, especially astronomy regarding Sun, Earth and Moon harmonies. Off in the distance there is the Australia-American Memorial, and here we see it here where it's 240 feet or 2,880 inches high in total, while the eagle and sphere, which is of bronze and copper, there's an alchemical reference there, is 36 feet or 108 hands, so essentially 288 and 108. Parliament House in Canberra, the pyramid on the top breaks down into 280 smaller triangles, smaller units, while the square, which the building is made, is 328 yards or 10,800 medieval royal inches, 288, 108. Previous episodes I've shown how this is continued in many other places. Washington especially, you can literally shift these buildings and these measurements onto the Washington plan. But now let's have a look at the Eiffel Tower, which I've mentioned earlier. Total height 10,800 medieval royal inches. The same, the height is equal to the length of Parliament House in Canberra. This is no mistake, and there are 72 scientists listed on the Eiffel Tower, another harmonic number. Previous episodes I've shown how this plan is carried throughout Paris, but also, as I mentioned earlier, Washington and the other great cities of the world. It's a template which extends back centuries, but it continues into the modern world. The explanation that this is a result of older eras where less let's call it, where people were maybe more spiritual, let's say. This can be destroyed by the fact that these older monuments are in fact carried through and replicated in one form or another into the modern world, especially Canberra, Brasilia and Astana. But we're going to focus on Paris and the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe. So the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower are the two most iconic structures in Paris, and they resonate with this design, with this plan, 72, 288 and 108, such as Notre Dame Cathedral, which has a vault of 108 feet. This is an internal measure. The exterior measures I've mentioned previously are built around the medieval royal foot, has the medieval royal scale, as I showed earlier with the Parliament House in Canberra. Here we see how it's built into the levels. This in itself is also a reference to Solomon's Temple, which was built in two levels of 30 cubits and 60 cubits. Shifted units, but the same message. Medieval royal inches, 10,800 or 328 yards, exactly the same as Parliament House in Canberra. A very modern, one of the first structures made that was designed on computer, coincidentally. It could be, one of the earliest modern structures. However, more than that, the first level of the Eiffel Tower is 189 feet high, and here we can see the scale in SI, or the standard, the common measures, but also the lesser known Cremona scale. For instance, it's 486 hand on the Cremona scale, which would tune it to be on the scientific tuning scale, sometimes also known as the Pythagorean tuning scale. But the knowledge continues. So, for instance, 189 feet, 1,890 Egyptian royal miles is the equatorial diameter of the moon. The Royal Mile, as in the Royal Mile in Scotland, has been carried through the ages. It's an ancient unit and it's carried through. And, well, 252 span. Eratosthenes measured the polar circumference of the Earth at 252,000 stadia. Now, depending on which stadia you choose, it's either very accurate or magnificently accurate. Either way, it's beautiful. 756 palm, the Sun has an equatorial diameter of 756,000 Egyptian royal miles. Sun, Earth and Moon. These structures resonate. They are built as temples of Sun, Earth and Moon. We can take that further. So on the Cremona scale, 108 cubits, 1,080 miles is the radius of the Sun, but I prefer to deal with diameters, and also because it connects to the Longfoot, which again is an ancient measure derived from Stonehenge and the studies of Stonehenge. So 108 on the Longfoot scale. 116,200 equatorial diameter on the furlong on the Doric scale. Doric scale again is an ancient measure, but the iconic Parthenon in Athens is built to harmonise with these scales. 189 feet, 2,160 miles is the miles we know is the equatorial diameter of the Moon again. Sun, Earth and Moon. This will repeat again. There's other levels and other parts of it, but Sun, Earth and Moon. 648,000 rods on the Doric scale, equatorial diameter of the Moon. Once again, harmonies between multiple versions, units of measure, and harmony between Sun, Earth and Moon, and also music. 6,480,000 furlong on the Doric scale is the equatorial diameter of the Sun. Sun, Earth and Moon. Continues again, as I mentioned earlier. 756,000 Egyptian royal miles. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the base, the southern base, is essentially exactly 756 feet. It's a slightly bit more according to J.H. Cole, but because of the margins of error, you're effectively 99.99999% correct. 486 hand on the Cremona scale. B, 486 hertz, again scientific tuning. Sun, Earth and Moon. And also the base of the Eiffel Tower, 410 feet equals 273.3333 cubits, while in the Doric fathom scale it's 29.53125. We'll get back to these in a second. The Eiffel Tower, as all of Paris, as all of Canberra, as all of Washington, has Brasilia, has Astana, is built around esoteric knowledge, primarily focused on the astronomy and the metrology, Sun, Earth and Moon. But what is 29.53? .53 is about Sun, Earth and Moon, and we can begin to decode it by looking at the Vesica Pisces. The rhombus inside has a ratio of 265 to 153, which is best whole number approximation of the square root of 3. Back to Paris and the Louvre Pyramid. Famously, each side, except for the entrance, and that's a separate story, has is defined by 153 rhombi. What's so important about that? Well, this connects us to some very beautiful astronomy and some very beautiful geometry. 33, 153, 253. We'll get into this. The synodic month, that's how we define the full moon. It's a relationship about Sun, Earth and Moon. So one revolution of the moon around the Earth in relation to the Sun is a synodic month. And how long does a synodic month last? 29.53 days. How high is the first level of the Eiffel Tower? 29.53 in the Doric scale. This is no mistake. Mark my word, and we'll take this even further. Freemasonic tracing boards are relatively new compared to Kershaw and to older masters of the esoteric craft, let's call it. So 153, the square root of 153 is 12.369. That's how many synodic months per year. A synodic month is 29.53. That's again the height of the first level of the Eiffel Tower in the Doric scale. What else is important about the synodic month? That's how we define the eclipse, and we can predict eclipses using this method. Because the moon wobbles up and down in its orbit, we don't have an eclipse every 29.53 days. But understanding this, we can predict them, and predicting eclipses is one of the best proofs and best examples of this knowledge. It's a wonderful thing. But again, esoteric tracing boards, Sun, Earth and Moon, but they also will feature the celestial sphere, which is will even have the zodiac drawn around it. So what does that mean? Sun, Earth, Moon and the stars. The synodic month is a relationship of Sun, Earth and Moon, but we have something else called the Sidereal Month, which is a relationship of Earth, Moon and a fixed star. The Sidereal Month lasts for 27.3 days. It's essentially what defines the menstrual cycle. So here we see 29.53 fathom on the Doric scale. Sun, Earth and Moon on the other scales, and 29.531 on the Doric. The base is 273.333 cubits. We could mark the point down there, but other structures are 27.3 or 2.73. These I'm going to start exploring this, because underneath the whole number Pythagorean scale there's a whole bunch of other knowledge going on. Beautiful astronomical connections. So one sidereal month, on average 27.3216 days. Because of the elasticity of the orbits of both the moon around the earth and the earth around the sun, this will move in and out, essentially giving us 27.3 throughout. So at last 27.32166 is the average, one orbit of the moon around the earth in relation to a fixed star. During that time, the moon will orbit once on its own axis. So one moon day is 27.32166 days on average. Synchronous orbits and synchronous rotation. This in itself is not special. More often than not, moons will develop a synchronous orbit. That's not on its own. That's not very special, but that's just a tip of where we're going to go. So let's quickly review. The reason why the man on the moon always faces the earth is because the moon rotates on its axis every 27.32 days, and in relation to a fixed star, earth, moon and star, that's the same time. So one moon year equals one moon day, effectively. Well, okay, big deal, maybe. Okay, every sidereal month, on average, the Earth moves through 26.9 degrees of the solar arc. So in its orbit around, being 360 degrees, on average it'll be 26.9. But because of the elliptical orbit of both the Earth around the Sun and the Moon around the Earth, the Earth will move through 27.32 or through this scale during this month. So 27.32 degrees, or 27.33 as well. One moon day equals one moon year. That's in days. In degrees, it also equals 27.32. The symphony begins. This is tested, this is measurable, and for some reason it's completely ignored by the establishment, either because they don't know or because some of them don't want you to know because of the implications of this. Is that it? That's not it on its own. The moon is 27.3% the size of the Earth. whether it's polar diameter or equatorial diameter, it's always the same, 27.3. This on its own might be curious, but how far is the moon from the Earth? An elliptical orbit. Apogee, the maximum distance on average is 0.0027 AU, astronomical units. It's a standard unit in astronomy. However, because of superorbits, it will extend to 0.00273 AU. The moon does not revolve around the center of the Earth. It revolves around, centered on the barycenter, which is 27.3% below the Earth's surface. Once again, that's effectively one radius of the moon. Not only that, the barycenter is effectively 5,000 kilometers below the surface of the Earth, or 1,000 miles. Is much more. Exactly, there is much more to this. This is just the beginning. 273. Well, Ceres, or protoplanet Ceres, is 2.73 AU, moves through that point. So do many of the other bodies in the asteroid belt, and it has 27.3% the diameter of the moon. What's going on? We can find it, for instance, Mercury to Venus, again, 27.3% AU from Mercury to Venus. From Venus to Earth, it will pass through 27.3% of one astronomical unit. Again, Sun, Earth and Moon, but this extends into the stars and to the planets. The Sidereal Month is a harmony of Earth, Moon and stars. The length of the day, well, on average it's 86,400 seconds, 24 hours, but the length of the day actually shifts because of various forces in the elliptical orbit and gravitational forces. Every 27.3 days, the length of the Earth resets. Atmospheric tides have been observed where there is a cycle where the atmospheric pressures have a cycle of 27.3 days. Sun, Moon and stars. The Schumann resonance, 27.3 hertz, and is also, well, this is the resonance comes from lightning, and at the equator there's a 27.3 day cycle. Once again, sunspots. Even some of the earliest observations noticed that the sunspot cycles are at 27.3 days at the latitude of 27.3 degrees north or south, which is where they're most prominent. Temperature of the sun is 273 times hotter than the average temperature of the Earth. Fahrenheit, Celsius and Kelvin, they put information in here, beautiful information. 0 degrees equals 273.15 Kelvin. Absolute zero is negative 273 degrees on the Celsius scale. Temperature in space, 2.73 Kelvin. Space is not an absolute vacuum. Avogadro's constant. One of the fundamental bits of science. We tend to use kilos, but pounds per mole, 273. Charles's law about the heating of gases. Gases expand at a rate of 1/273 per unit of temperature. Again, a fundamental. Speed of sound and the temperature. How do you find the speed of sound in different temperatures? You have to use this equation, which relies on 273. 273 days is the average pregnancy from fertilization to birth. People tend to measure it from the last menstrual cycle, but the actual from fertilization to birth, 273 days. 28-day menstrual cycle, well, 27.3, the 28th day. Fibonacci numbers, we're going to find this, and Fibonacci spirals in prime numbers, the multiplication of the first three alternate primes also brings us 23. In geometry, the area of a square inside of a circle, the square is 2.73 larger. This is one of the hidden constants in geometry and a hidden constant in nature. in computing, Gaussian blur, that's how they, to blur an image is quite difficult. How to blur an image, 273. How to de-blur an image, 273. Sun, Earth, Moon and stars. Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, the Earth and the Moon, Phi and Pi has in the Great Pyramid, 273. The builders of these designs knew this, and this is what they were trying to tell us, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.